Hi, I'm Yancida Ariano. I'm the Program Supervisor of Culture Connect Inland Intercultural Youth Wellness Initiative. And here we are joined by amazing interns that have joined this cohort where we talk about mental, emotional, and behavioral health and ways to destigmatize mental health in our community. And here to introduce themselves are our lovely interns.
Hi, I'm Naomi. I'm the Marketing and Communications Officer.
Hi, I'm Yara. I'm your Documentation Officer.
Hi, I'm Santiago. I'm Outreach and Programming Officer.
Hi, I'm Giselle, and I'm the Lead Youth Officer.
And here to speak on our behalf on mental health is an amazing guest speaker, Dr. Michelle Pruitt. If you would like to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Michelle Pruitt, and I am a holistic educator and metaphysical counselor. Happy to be here today.
Thank you so much for sharing that information, Dr. Pruitt. That was very insightful. From your experience, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges families face today when it comes to discussing mental health?
Oh, that's a great question, Naomi. I think the challenges are always going to be unique to each and every family, but I can talk from my particular experience in serving the community that I do in Ontario, California, with the student population that I serve. For that group, I notice, and even with my private practice with clients online sometimes, I notice that people aren't always up for the realization that, mental health is a journey, not a destination. Mm-hmm. And so people many times want a quick fix. Mm-hmm. And, can you fix my kid? Can you fix me? Can you fix my husband? Can you fix my family? And the answer is really no. And that's, a disillusioning response. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's really about understanding that in the world that we are in right now, a part of life is dealing with uncertainty, and uncertainty breeds anxiety. And being okay with that, okay? And talking about how can we be resilient despite this anxiety and uncertainty is really a better conversation than how can you help my child with their anxiety or fix their anxiety or get their anxiety to go away.
Yeah.
That's a really good perspective. Earlier you also mentioned in 2015 there was a shift. How do you think families have evolved over mental health?
That's a great question too, Yana. I think that today in 2025 compared to 10 years ago, families are far more open because we've seen so many tragedies, right? Yeah. And it's right up in front of us in our face. Unfortunately, we've seen things happen in schools that are traumatic and violent. And when those things happen, the first thing everyone wonders is what was the mental health of the person who conducted that activity, right? Mm-hmm. Whether that's at the school or the grocery store or wherever these things are happening. So in that way, we're open to it because we see the violence and the effects, and then the children, right, are coming up with these needs, and now we have schools open to support systems, we have grant funding, we have a lot of MFTs now in the school right on site to where 10 years ago it was third-party recommendation. Yeah. Now the school systems are staffed with MFTs, peer counseling programs, wellness centers ever since COVID. Yeah. These are things that in 2015 I imagined, but they were non-existent. And so now I do feel like it's not just me and a couple other teachers or one counselor. It's a whole systemic, systems approach, which is better than it was 10 years ago. Is it enough? No. Is it ever going to be enough? Probably not. But again, how can we be resilient with the resources that we have? How can we get families to utilize these supports over time without the expectation that in 3 months my kid will be fixed, right? Or I will be fixed. And really looking at it as a progression through life, and that these are just aspects of modernity and this capitalist system that really tells us just feel better and buy something, right?
So you mentioned a lot, the conversation around mental health kind of been more open over time. But I'm sure there's still some challenges. So what do you think some of the biggest challenges young people and really people in general kind of face when it comes to dealing with their mental health?
That's awesome, Santiago. There are so many challenges. I'm gonna go back again with the expectation that I want you to fix me, right? What if you're not broken, right? What if this is a symptom of the collective trauma, the collective pain, the collective place that we are in as human beings? What if our anxiety is actually asking us to pay attention to something in our life? What if it's telling us we're not on the right path? What if it's telling us our timeline isn't serving our growth well? Then we need to pay attention to that anxiety rather than just shove it down with some pills and think it's going to go away. So I think that a more realistic approach to this, it would be helpful. Now, there are some aspects of mental health that are very severe, right? And you're talking about things like multiple personality disorder, schizophrenia, those sorts of things. But what we see most often right now are just, regular old neurosis that's been been around for thousands of years. It's now exacerbated because we've got anxiety and we got things like social media that help to contribute to that, which I do think is a huge contribution to that anxiety. This whole idea that, young people especially are supposed to be camera ready at all times. We see a lot of our female youth, feel like they have to be, beautiful because they can go at any moment live, on camera, or, their friends are going to walk by with a TikTok live or Instagram live. And there's so much pressure with that.
Yeah.
I think that there's this idea that so many people are watching and expecting. And also we're watching and expecting and comparing ourselves to others. So there's that aspect. Plus there's the socio-political aspect that's always disenfranchising the marginalized group and putting them in harm's way. And, rarely our system's going to be set up to support those groups.
Yeah. And what I have noticed because of social media is that now there's an oversaturation of people minimizing their mental health. They're making jokes like, oh yeah, this weekend I had like a mental breakdown or something. And like, oh yeah, I just had an anxiety attack, it's fine. But like, we as a society, we have to like dig deeper into that, like kind of look more deeper into why was I feeling this way? Why not just minimize it like, yeah, this happened. But what is something that you think that we can do as a collective to kind of bring more attention to these things, kind of pay more attention to your body and your mind because of these triggers? I know you mentioned something about listening to your body a bit more.
Yeah, I think that's great, right? Listening to the body. Anxiety happens because the autonomic nervous system is telling us something is off. When our heart beats fast, when we begin to sweat, those things are indicators to stop and pause, evaluate what you're doing, take a break, use some deep breathing, be around something that you find soothing and calming. But when we don't pay attention to that, when we suppress that, when we ignore that, then that's when it bubbles up to what you're talking about, a full-on mental breakdown over the weekend, or a panic attack, or, self-harm. This is still an issue. This was big in 2015. We saw students with self-harm. That was, the biggest indicator for me that it had gotten out of control, right? And I think now there's less of it that I see, okay, because those students are now getting, I think, support from peer counseling, MFTs at the school site. We now have social emotional learning programs in schools. Department of Education and the state have funded things in ways that they just hadn't in the past. I hope that funding continues. I think it, needs to grow. I think community-based organizations absolutely have a role in that to fill in, because there's just only so much you can do in the school day. And so programs like El Sol, I think, are pivotal to filling in the gap where the institutions lack.
Thank you guys so much for watching this segment. I hope you guys enjoyed all the topics that we covered. Make sure to stay tuned for the other segments that are available. And if you guys are interested in the Culture and Connect program internship or want to apply soon, here's the QR code. Thank you guys for watching.